Day 3 is complete. A little bit later, but guys, we're still W, covering Gold Cup W here at the Africans, covering Canadian African content. Canada finally got on the pitch, but we'll get to them a little bit later. Let's talk about the games. Guys, if you like this type of content, we do primarily Canadian African content because we wouldn't be the Africans if we didn't do both. Let's talk about day 3 at the Gold Cup W. First game of the day. We had Paraguay getting the win over Costa Rica in a battle of qualified versus nearly qualified for last year's World Cup. And I think that the most interesting thing about this game, rewatching it, was the idea of quality versus quantity. Now, again, we're taking all our stats here from Google here, so make sure you guys use whatever stat keepers you have. And you can look at the stats that they have here. And one of the more interesting things I see is the shots versus shots on target. Costa Rica had more shots, according to Google, 14-11, but the shots on target, 6-1 for Paraguay. Speaks to just how much more dangerous one side was the other, but then also how much Costa Rica was a little bit lacking in that final third. I mean, Costa Rica had the ball, but that's what Paraguay wanted to do. 68 versus 32, more passes, more accuracy, but Paraguay did what they had to do. Look at the foul discrepancy, 17-10. That just screams to a game of disrupting the flow and getting back into your defensive shape. And that's what Paraguay did a good job of doing. Now, my one concern, I said this in the last video, I do apologize for the technical issues of that. Lee Chamorro in the 51st minute game, the game-winning goal, that 9 for Paraguay. The refs are letting these teams play. And if that's what they're going to do, I have no issue with that. But can they keep it consistent? Because we know once we reach the quarterfinals, they're going to start to call it a little bit tighter, maybe start throwing the calls. That's fine, but everything matters. So if you're going to let the players determine everything on the pitch, 4 yellows for Paraguay versus 1 for Costa Rica, you need to make sure you're consistent throughout the entire tournament, because if not, you leave yourself in a very interesting situation. And I think that's where you want more. Good to see a friend of the show. She just got back in the Costa Rica 11. Good, promising U20, U17 player. So it's good to see her back. She did have an injury at the end of last year. So nice to see her back. And Rodriguez. We did see also in this game a picked up penalty that VAR went and said no. They called it as a hand. VAR said it was more upper body, upper chest, and they didn't call it. Was that the right call, you guys? I don't know. I think it on replay looked like the right call, but in real time it could be. But maybe you see it differently. Let me know what you think. But ultimately, this 5-3-2 versus this 4-4-2, Paraguay is going to play defensively and going to try to play tight, and that's their game. But in their counter, and that's the thing that we've seen that's interesting. We saw this with Puerto Rico, and we're seeing this with Paraguay. It's not just having a solid defensive line, but furthermore, being on the counterattack, creating quality opportunities that's going to make the difference between a winning side and a side that leaves itself a little bit more to be desired. So I think it does open the door for possibilities. Costa Rica only losing by 1 doesn't mean that they're done. The door is still open, but the group is a little bit operating as we expected it to be. I think we all looked and figured you would get Canada at the top of the group, and then eventually maybe Paraguay or Costa Rica coming through. El Salvador was a bit more of that wild card, but this group is now looking very good. I'm curious to see what you guys think about the first matchup. Now, when we get to the second matchup, Canada. No, I won't say the other part of that because y'all know. But Canada winning their game by the score of 6-0 and a good run for it there. What was interesting with this matchup, as we throw up these Google stats up here for you guys, it was the type of game that you expect. Canada had the bulk of possession, 24 shots, 10 on target. And if you watch the game, there are opportunities. This game could have easily been 8, maybe 9-0. The question I had, and I did a podcast because, guys, I do cover Canadian football from time to time. The question I had for Canada was, were they going to run more of players in form versus the players that Bev trusts? And Bev went with the players that she trusted first, and that's fine. We did see three yellows, my apologies on that. So saving plays for other games. It might be time to try to find a good matchup. But D'Angelo was tested a little bit, not too hard. A good play for her. But then I think the start of the game was Chloe Lacasse. Chloe Lacasse has been in form. It's remarkable that it's taken her much time to get into the team, but her form has been great. Leon with 2 goals. Lacasse had a goal and 3 assists. She was everywhere, and she really played well. And I'm curious to see what they do with that moving forward. You have Seren Fisher on the El Salvador side really pushing, but for Canada, we look at a lot of what we saw, and everything kind of fits how it is. We had Lacasse in the 3rd minute, Heidema on a missed cross from the goalkeeper in the 24th, Leon with a 28th and a penalty in the 59th, Kadisha on a header from a set piece, and then Olivia Smith with her first goal for Canada. She's been tearing it up in Portugal at Sporting and now gets on the board. Her tally starts for Canada. Also, she will be playing probably for the U20s, barring an injury. We knock on all the wood, which means she has a chance to be Canada's all-time women's youth goal-scoring leader, which could be interesting. That's another point for the day. But in terms of Canada, I loved the lineups. I love the rotation as well. I think the rotation really did bring up more as we look at some of these stats here. 10 corners, none, 3 offsides each, 4 to 3 yellows, 10 to 13 fouls, passing 86 to 49. El Salvador was giving space, and Chloe Lacasse's pace was just eating up that space, and it really worked well for them. But I love the rotation that we saw here, especially when we look at the subs for Canada. You saw Deanne Rose, Julia Grosso, Yasmin Ali-Du, Evelyn Vienne, and Olivia Smith. And I did see someone say it, Laura from the Rise Above podcast, which covers Canadian content as well. Deanne Rose is a solid player, but because the Olympics are coming, and we mentioned this in the video and the podcast, for Canada, this is their Olympic prep tournament. So a lot of these players, minus some of the injured ones, this is their showcase to say they just belong on the 18. And for a player like Deanna Rose, though she is coming back from injury and playing in the WSL, it is something that you're going to need to see something that comes. Now, ultimately, Bev may just go with the player she trusts, but looking at the form, Ali Du is in great form. Grosso's in good form. Vienne's in good form. Olivia Smith is in good form. Where are the players that you can say, oh, no one's really challenging? All positions, players are challenging, maybe except for goalkeeper as well as, say, the center backs. There aren't many players that are pushing through. So it'll be very interesting to see how Bev makes a decision. But a good, easy win, which now sets them up in a very comfortable spot. Canada now sits at the top of their group. And reminder again, the groups are group winners and the teams at the final 8 will be seeded. So goal difference matters. Amount of yellow cards matter. So though Canada got the 6, those yellow cards might affect whether they're maybe a top 3 side, maybe a top 2 side. It will all come into effect, and it's something that they all need to be worried about and be aware of. So just to round it up for everyone and show where everyone is after everyone has played one full game. Here are the groups. In Group A, you have the U.S. up on Group A with Argentina and Mexico drawing, and then Dom Rep at -5, goal difference in 0 points. In Group B, Colombia with 6 goals, Brazil with 1, both with 3 points. They play each other in the next game, which is tomorrow. And then Puerto Rico, Panama, the battle for third. That'll be a very interesting setup. And then Canada on top of Paraguay, and then Costa Rica and El Salvador with no games. And guys, to let you know the matchups coming up today, you have Dom Rep versus Mexico and Argentina versus the U.S. 2 solid defensive teams versus 2 teams which will be comfortable with the ball. We'll see what comes from there, guys. You give me your predictions. What did you learn from day 3? And who do you have winning on day 4? Guys, thank you for swinging by again. Thank you for all the feedback. We know the internet is not always the best, but we appreciate the feedback and the help you give us. And until next time, guys, we say bye-bye for now.